In the heart of America's industrial age stood a giant, a titan of steel and shipbuilding that helped forge the bridges, skyscrapers, warships, and rails that defined the 20th century. For nearly a century, its furnaces blazed night and day, feeding the skeleton of modern America. This wasn't just steel. This was Bethlehem Steel, a name once synonymous with American industrial might. But by the turn of the 21st century, this colossal company had vanished, gone from the stock exchanges, its plants silent, its legacy contested. How did a company whose steel built icons like the Golden Gate Bridge and whose shipyards produced hundreds of warships for World War II rise to such heights only to fall into bankruptcy and liquidation? This is the story of Bethlehem Steel. The Bethlehem Steel Corporation was an American steelmaking company headquartered in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. From its beginnings in the mid-19th century to its dissolution in the early 21st century, Bethlehem Steel played a central role in the industrial development of the United States. Founded first as the Salcona Iron Company in 1857, the business eventually became the Bethlehem Steel Company in 1899, and then the Bethlehem Steel Corporation in 1904. Its corporate life spanned more than a century, and at its height it was one of the largest steel producers in the world. Steel was more than a product at Bethlehem. It was the backbone of a nation's growth. Bridges that connected cities, skyscrapers that defined skylines, railroads that united regions, naval fleets that protected freedom. Bethlehem Steel also became one of the country's largest shipbuilders, producing thousands of warships, destroyers, and cruisers during both World Wars. But for every rise, there is a fall. By the late 20th century, this industrial colossus was in decline, unable to adapt quickly enough to global competition, changing technologies, and mounting financial pressures. Eventually, bankruptcy and liquidation sealed its fate in 2003. Bethlehem Steel's story begins more than a century and a half ago with a simple ironworks in Pennsylvania. In 1857, entrepreneur Augustus Wohl established the Salcona Iron Company. This humble industrial venture laid the groundwork for what would become one of the world's most powerful steel producers. Over the next few decades, as the United States expanded west, built railroads, and modernized its economy, the demand for iron and steel skyrocketed. By 1861, the company had become the Bethlehem Iron Company, opening its first blast furnace and producing rails that would eventually carry the weight of a growing nation. Steel production was not just a business, it was a national priority. Across the country, America was transforming from an agrarian economy to an industrial powerhouse. In this environment, Bethlehem Iron grew quickly, supplying iron and steel to railroads, bridges, and early industrial infrastructure. The turn of the 20th century brought organizational changes that laid the foundation for greater expansion. In 1899, the Bethlehem Steel Company was established, absorbing the iron-making operations and refocusing on steel products. By 1904, the company reformed as the Bethlehem Steel Corporation, signaling its ambition to compete nationally and globally. Bethlehem Steel's role in wartime production was a defining chapter in its history. During World War I, the company became a major supplier of ammunition, armaments, and ship components to the U.S. military. Steel from Bethlehem flowed into the war effort, helping the United States and its allies manufacture the tools of victory. This demand not only expanded Bethlehem's physical footprint, but reinforced its position as a cornerstone of American industry. As the 20th century progressed, Bethlehem Steel became synonymous with the grand symbols of modern America. The company's steel was used to build some of the nation's most iconic structures and infrastructure projects, testaments to American ingenuity and industrial capability. Among the landmarks that relied on Bethlehem Steel's products were the Empire State Building, a towering symbol of New York City's skyline; Madison Square Garden, home to sports and entertainment in Manhattan; Rockefeller Center, the heart of Midtown Manhattan; Golden Gate Bridge, a marvel of engineering connecting San Francisco to Marin County. Peace Bridge, an international gateway between the United States and Canada. These steel beams and girders were more than metal, they were the framework of progress itself. Throughout the early 20th century, Bethlehem Steel expanded its facilities across the United States. Massive mills, blast furnaces, research laboratories, and shipyards were built in Pennsylvania, Maryland, New York, Indiana, and beyond. The company became a major employer, supporting tens of thousands of workers and generating vast economic activity in the communities around its plants. At its peak, it was one of the largest industrial employers in the country, a testament to the scale and ambition of American manufacturing at the time. The mid-20th century was the golden age for Bethlehem Steel. As the United States emerged from the Great Depression and mobilized for World War II, Bethlehem Steel's production capacity became indispensable to the nation's war effort. By the late 1930s and throughout the 1940s, Bethlehem Steel shipyards and steel plants ran around the clock, building hundreds of warships, destroyers, cruisers, and aircraft carriers during both world wars. During this era, Bethlehem became the second-largest steel producer in the United States, behind U.S. Steel. It employed tens of thousands of workers across multiple states. Its products fueled national infrastructure, defense, and economic growth. For many Americans, Bethlehem Steel symbolized industrial pride, technological progress, and national strength. Its workforce enjoyed union representation, relatively high wages, and a sense of identity tied to manufacturing success. In 20th century America, the year when Bethlehem Steel stood tallest marked the beginning of its challenges. By the late 1960s and into the 1970s, the very forces that once fueled industrial growth began to shift. Once insulated by domestic demand and wartime necessity, Bethlehem Steel now faced global competition. Steel imports from Japan, Western Europe, and later South Korea and China entered the U.S. market at lower prices, eroding Bethlehem's market share. Foreign steel producers, often operating with newer technologies and lower labor costs, outpaced U.S. producers. Bethlehem, with its aging plants and legacy systems, struggled to compete. U.S. mini-mills, smaller steel producers using electric arc furnaces, became a disruptive force, producing steel from scrap more efficiently and cheaply than Bethlehem could with its giant blast furnaces. As Bethlehem's workforce declined with plant closures and layoffs, financial obligations grew heavier. Pensions and healthcare benefits for retirees, negotiated through decades of union work, became long-term liabilities that strained company finances. As foreign competition cut into profits, Bethlehem Steel's legacy costs, from pensions to healthcare and environmental cleanup, became a crushing burden. The early 1980s were particularly devastating for Bethlehem Steel. In 1982, the company posted huge losses and consequently suspended most of its steelmaking operations. A domino effect ensued. Major plants closed, thousands of jobs were lost, local economies tied to the mills began to suffer. By 1995, Bethlehem's historic home plant in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, the heart of its operations for more than a century, rolled out steel for the last time. Despite attempts to restructure, diversify into other industries, and preserve remaining operations, Bethlehem Steel could not reverse its decline. Mounting losses, foreign competition, technological limitations, and financial burdens finally forced the company to seek bankruptcy protection. In 2001, the Bethlehem Steel Corporation formally filed for bankruptcy. 2 years later, in 2003, the company was dissolved and its remaining assets sold off to the International Steel Group, marking the official end of Bethlehem Steel's corporate existence.
The rise and fall of Bethlehem Steel is more than the story of a company. It is the story of America's industrial revolution, its post-war triumphs, its vulnerability to global economic shifts, and the profound transformations of the late 20th century. Bethlehem Steel helped build the physical structures, bridges, buildings, ships, rails that shaped the modern world. Yet as the world moved forward, new competitors, new technologies, and changing markets left traditional industrial giants behind. Today, former Bethlehem Steel sites serve as reminders of both industrial might and industrial decline. Heritage locations, repurposed facilities, and urban redevelopment projects that reflect a legacy both monumental and bittersweet. The story of Bethlehem Steel raises important questions. What does it mean when a nation's industrial backbone erodes? How do communities adapt when the factories that once defined them disappear? And can the lessons learned from Bethlehem Steel guide the future of manufacturing in a global economy? What remains is steel, memory, and story. A story of ambition, innovation, power, and ultimately, change.